Well, Michael, good morning.
Good morning, Bob. It's good to be with you this morning. I'm excited about our conversation.
Yeah, it's actually been a while since we've talked. I think maybe getting on close to a year, and uh, I started this podcast maybe a few months back, trying to do something a little bit different. We might talk about VR a little bit. We might talk about education, but really, I want to talk about you. I want to learn a little bit more about your background and upbringing, and then we'll kind of just go from there and see where the conversation takes us.
Sure. I mean that sounds like a easy set of skis to get on this morning.
And so I know actually very little about you beyond your work at Motlow. Tell me a little bit about your. I don't know where you grew up. I don't know your family background. So if you're comfortable, share some of that.
Sure, sure. Well, I'm from an agrarian and industrial family, and I like to clarify that because I've graduated to the digital and the gig and the emerging tech space. So my grandfather worked as a manager foreman of janitors at a local veterans hospital in Richmond, Virginia, among other things that he did. And my grandmother actually was someone who cleaned homes for the wealthy or well-to-do or who could afford it in Richmond, Virginia. But both of them, specifically my grandmother, which I know more about, was actually from Dinwiddie County in Virginia, Petersburg area, which in the southeast we call that area the country. Farms. The family had a 400-acre farm during the time that she grew up before she was the first of nine siblings to move to the city of Richmond and start a family. My mother actually um, is a person who's worked in several industrial jobs. The one that people will most be familiar with was probably Philip Morris, one of the larger employers in the city of Richmond and the greater Commonwealth state of Virginia in that area. Uh, Literally made cigarettes, and prior to that, actually worked in a morgue. So as a kid, I played in the morgue. Bob, I know that sounds a little ominous, but I learned that life isn't forever, so you better get busy doing whatever you're going to do.
How
Um,
long did she work at Philip Morris?
I worked at Philip Morris probably a good 15, 16 years.
And in the factory side of things?
Yeah, in the factory side of things, quality checks. So, all of my friends who were always asking me, man, why are you worried about the details? Because I had to hear about the details at home. And she's a very detail oriented human. So she
And so
passed.
I'm just a little curious. Well, was she a smoker herself? What was her after her time at Philip Morris? What was her reflection on working in tobacco?
Yeah. So she thought that, and one, she was a smoker while at Philip Morris, Benson and Hedges. I remember those boxes being at my house by the carton. Um, but afterwards, she stopped smoking, and the smell of tobacco, obviously, because if anyone's ever taken a tour or been around tobacco fields or drying barns of tobacco, it's a very rich and thick scent. Uh, she can't stand to be around it anymore. Um, but while doing it, uh, great job, great pay, and was able to raise a little kid off of it. So I think she was okay with it.
Okay.
Uh,
And you had siblings?
no, I'm the only child.
You're an
Uh,
only child. Okay.
yeah, yeah, Bob. My mom said she got it right the first time, so there's no need to no need to have any more.
Right. Why perfection the first time around? Why roll the dice?
Right, right, right.
And if I can add, was your father around growing up, or
No, no, no. It's just my mom and I. It's always been that way, uh, and there's nothing wrong with that. Sometimes it takes a woman to raise a man, and so I think she did the best job she could, and I turned out pretty good. I think I'm
yeah,
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 I'm
pretty
doing
good.
all right.
So you only knew your mother's parents.
Correct.
Okay, and her parents grew up in the Richmond area as well. So you're kind of a third generation Richmond, Virginia.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Right out of the if people are familiar with visiting the Richmond metro area, north side, and it's the Church Hill, Chimerazel area, right near Broad Street, um, literally up the street from MCV, the Medical College of Virginia, Virginia Commonwealth University, and Virginia State University, one of the HBCUs in the state.
So what kind of kid were you growing up? Were you a bookworm? Were you playing sports? All of the above? Getting into trouble?
All of the above, with the exception to the last one. So I would say that I was participatory in everything that everyone else did, but smart enough not to be someplace where people would get caught doing these quote unquote shenanigans. I'm the kid that would throw rocks. I've washed neighbors' cars in mud because I didn't know any better and I thought it was funny. No, but nothing crazy, nothing notorious. Uh, just a young boy with his friends who were boys running around neighborhoods in Richmond, Virginia. The worst thing I think I ever did was probably I used to love to throw rocks. I don't know what it is about throwing rocks and being a boy or a young girl, but
Oh, skipping stones, maybe.
yeah, it just enjoyed it. But we would have rock fights where we would actually take the lids off of the aluminum trash cans, and those would be our shields. Um, that goes to the mindset of being that small and not understanding that you're not, and you can break, you can bleed, and it does hurt. So those were some of my most fun things I did as I guess, a tiny hooligan running around with my buddies. Nothing crazy. That's probably the worst as it got.
And so now you were in the military, and so did you go into the Air Force out of high school, or what was the road to there, and why?
Yeah. That's a really good question. I wasn't forced into it, but I was choiced into it. Out of coming out of high school, I had a full grant and aid athletic scholarship to several universities. So the Division I dream and all that good stuff. And I started off in Bowie's Creek, North Carolina, at Campbell University, uh, going to school, majoring in mass communications initially, and playing on the men's basketball team. Um,
Basketball.
sometime, yep, basketball.
You're
Yep.
not that tall.
Tall enough, fast enough, and athletic
Were you a
enough.
guard?
The point guard. So
Point guard.
uh, I think that in some instances, the alliance of quote unquote presidenting or leading that comes in part by way of doing the same thing on a basketball team. Not necessarily worried about my own specific stats, but don't turn it over. Give it to people in good positions. Celebrate them and quietly, one on one, inform them where they can do better. I think that's one of those. Those are some of the skills that I think have been translated from playing basketball at that level, at a high level. But ultimately, sometimes young people, and I was one of them, you think that your talent is actually, you think your talent far exceeds what you're actually capable of. And I wanted to play, and I thought that I should start. And when that didn't happen as a freshman, I said, well, I can pick up my bags and go elsewhere. So I transferred to James Madison University, where Lefty Driesell was the coach. Chuck Driesell was on the staff, and Rip Shearer was the head men's football coach. So I played football and basketball in high
Wow.
school, and
And basketball was Division I, and football Division II.
Division I.
Division I. Okay. James Madison was Division I.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
So um, I quickly discovered that they were bigger and faster, and it hurt. And I really wasn't interested in doing that either. So I came home after that first full year of school, having been at two schools and trying to figure myself out. And my mother suggested the following three edicts: you can go to work, you can find another school to go to, or you can join the military. And my family has a long history of being in the armed services. So I think I walked myself down to the recruiting station and met with the Air Force sergeant a week or two later and got my date of departure for December 7th, 1992. And the rest is history, as they say.
So you finished about 2 years of undergrad and then went into the Air Force.
So one year of undergrad, and then went into the Air Force, where I spent 4 years at Elmendorf Air Force Base, in between stops at Lackland and Wichita Falls, Shepherd Air Force Base, and luckily, I wasn't in love with playing basketball as I once was, but I kept playing, and I got a second chance to play and go to school at no cost with a full grant and aid to South Dakota State University after being in the Air Force for that time in Alaska. So the things that are supposed to work out, as they say, they work out. And I'm really thankful and grateful and fortunate that I had the opportunity to do it.
So tell me a little bit about how did you like Anchorage?
If I could have stayed at the University of Alaska Anchorage, I would have stayed there, and I probably would still be there. I enjoy the outdoors, and obviously Alaska is the great outdoors, places you can still homestead. I loved every minute of it up there. The Inuit local folks were great. I got a chance to travel the entirety of the state, including some of the chain islands, but yeah, but also spending time out at Point Barrow. The Air Force had a base basketball team, and then the state of Alaska had a men's AAU team, and they would allow us to travel and used basketball as goodwill. So we do cool things like go to people's schools and read to them in the out in the bush, as they would call it. And I actually think I was one of the first people on our team to jump into the water when they cut a hole in it. I forget what they call it, but you jump into the lake in the middle of the winter.
Yeah.
It's really silly to do it, but I did it. It was a cool thing. And I was like, man, if I don't do it, no one else will. So I've got a lot of great experiences. And then recognizing the cost of the loaf of bread, Bob. I know it's a strange thing to remember, but I remember being in Point Barrow in 1993 and going into a store because I wanted to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, and the bread was like $7.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I made it as far as Coldfoot. Uh,
Okay.
I guess about halfway between Fairbanks and Prudhoe Bay.
Yes.
So a long time ago, actually not almost around that period. My wife and I drove cross country and up the Alcan.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a great trip, and yeah, can't loved Anchorage, loved Fairbanks.
So did you guys take the highway up all the way, or did you jump at take the barge over from Bellingham, Washington?
No, we took it up all the way up through British Columbia and the Yukon. We did take the we took the barge back from maybe it was Skagway to Bellingham, um, and that was that was an interesting trip. We didn't have a private room; we were sleeping on the floor, and I
Oh
don't
yeah.
know if that was, it was not the best experience, but and I remember we remember there were a whole bunch of German tourists and a lot of drinking and
I understand. I've had I've had similar experiences. Similar experiences.
and then I had we had a when I was at Conservation International we had there was a big wilderness congress in Anchorage that I went back for. So yeah, loved it up there. We would love to just far. I mean, not that far really to fly, but it's just it seems like a long way, and need to go back regularly. But I think the weather up there is getting really strange as well at the last 10 years.
Yeah, it's a lot different. One of the transitions that you have when you first come from the lower 48 and end up there is that the full days where there's just sunlight, and then as it gets colder, it being dark for extended periods. You wake up, it's dark. You get off work, it's dark. And that messes with folks. Alcadian, was it Arcadian? Your circadian
Circadian.
rhythms,
Yeah.
your circadian rhythms, and I remember staying up all night because it's light, and then it's 6:30. It's like, oh, I didn't go to sleep. It's time to go to work, and that didn't fare well for the work that I had to do, and being a sleepy airman. So there are lots of nuances that you have to pick up on. Going up there and doing any kind of work. The Alaska pipeline was a big thing at the time, and then also the work that they did. I think it was Valdez. All of the oil and natural resources that are mined or cut
Yeah.
from
Actually,
the
what year
rich.
was the Valdez accident? Was that before or after '92? That was before, I
After,
think.
it was before. That was before '92. That was before
Okay.
'92. Yeah, but just
Go ahead.
no. Just really great experiences up there. Really good people. And unfortunately, when I left in '96, I have not returned. But I did. I have kept in touch with some folks though.
You haven't taken your family to Alaska yet.
No, no. We've gone the other way. We've been to Slavic countries like Poland and um, the Ukraine. Almost almost 20 years ago now. We used to go back there every 5 years up until COVID interrupted that rhythm. So we're due a trip here sometime soon.
And how was South Dakota?
Uh, I always say that South Dakota is where I became a man. I thought it was going to be Alaskan in the military experience, but uh, being in the plains and the sensibilities of Midwesterners is as unique as it is if you're from the North or the South or the West, et cetera, et cetera. Uh, but the common sense of hard work, trust, you have to be true to your word. Not that I didn't pick those things up in other places, but watching people live them, from bankers to janitors, having the chance to participate in local governance, um, gave me a different perspective and respect for, I guess, that leads up to the work that I get to enjoy during the day with people. So I thoroughly enjoyed it. We were very successful as a team. South Dakota State Jackrabbits, go Rabbits! For anyone listening to it, great, great experience there. With the normal hiccups, growing pains of being an individual by yourself and figuring it out like all kids do as they're going to school. But I had the luxury of having 4 years of experience behind me in a pretty high stress environment. So it made the transition a lot easier than coming from high school to college, but got me prepped for the rest of my life, I would say.
What was the I actually don't haven't talked to that many people that have played Division I sports in college. I mean, what was the pressure of of Division I basketball in South Dakota and balancing academics? Um, and just kind of curious how you manage that, and was it a problem or not?
Well, the variance I would say for any collegiate athlete is uh, the levels do impact expectations. And I don't mean that people don't want to quote unquote win, or programs and institutions don't want to win. But there's a difference between being in an SEC school and a non-SEC school. The expectation is that you're competitive year in and year out, and there's hefty weights associated with that. Balancing academics and the expectations of 40 to 60, sometimes 70-hour weeks as a student athlete, it's real. And I, again, these are experiences I think that shape uh, all kinds of leadership, because the ability to balance doing well in school, not just getting by, but doing well in school, as well as training and being committed and connected to teammates from all over the country. Um, those were and those are, I think, assets and tangible skill sets in terms of being able to communicate effectively, body language awareness, and knowing where to find resources. Uh, when you're not good at math or reading or writing or whatever it may be, you can find those resources. And I would say like the last thing that was a shift, uh, as I mentioned before, I was interested in mass communications to get started, and then I was more interested in STEM when I came back. But the idea of missing practice or missing workouts, you have to be committed to that. So literally the reason I became an English major is because some of the things that I wanted to do in the STEM area conflicted with practice. And at the end of the day, uh, you have to be where you have to be, right? So uh, English it was. So it's a balancing act, and I think people who are successfully able to do it are better for it in the long run.
So did you have some, I guess through your military years and then the 2 years at South Dakota, did you have an idea of what career path you were heading toward?
Yes, I mean, clearly I thought I was going to be a lawyer, Bob. Seriously, I was, when I committed to
We
doing.
don't need any more lawyers.
Yeah, but then, look, I was told that too. Collins Byrd, who was the dean and may still be the dean at the University of Minnesota Law School, was the son-in-law of one Dr. Dorothy Butler, and Eugene Butler III, who was a Tuskegee airman who worked at South Dakota State University. And I thought I was going to graduate and go on off to University of Minnesota to go to law school. Uh, but they also had an opportunity to be a TA and pay for my master's degree. And I really liked Brookings, South Dakota, so I decided to stick around. Um, Moving into this kind of role, I never really imagined it, to be frank. I thought that I would finish, teach as a professor, move through the ranks, write some books, and be as socially active and developing young people as possible. The normal stuff: have a family, uh, live a nice, rich life uh, of the academy. And I was well on my way until someone said, "Hey, have you ever thought about doing any administrative work?" and as they say, the rest is history. Here we are.
So you ended up teaching English for the most part for a number of years.
Taught English for a few years, and then took a took a break. Very interested in coaching basketball post finishing my master's degree, and I ended up spending some time with Kevin Eastman, who played at the University of Richmond, coached the Boston Celtics World Championship team at one point. So I was running camps for him, helping him with skills camps in the Richmond, Virginia area. Then I get a call from my high school coach, Mike Sutton, uh, asking if I was interested in being on his staff at Tennessee Tech University. And he reminded me, hey, they have a PhD program that you might be interested in. So school and basketball, or school and sport, really, there's always been a duality for me there, um, not having one without the other and trying to balance doing both simultaneously. So I agreed to do that and ended up at Tennessee Tech University coaching the Golden Eagles as a person that it was mostly in a support role. But, that's part of it as well, and not necessarily being on the floor coaching. You got to earn your stripes, as they say. But I also got into that Ph.D. program at Tennessee Tech in 2002 and worked my way through that before going over to Poland for a little while.
So I mean, basketball has really paid for three major degrees over the
Yes,
years.
yes, all of it, all of it.
Well, so tell me about Poland. What was that was during your PhD time?
Yes. So I'd written about, and more important, it's not necessarily I've written about. I was interested in uh, cultures, and specifically being in South Dakota, going backwards to go forwards. The Lakota Sioux Nation. There was a reservation near Brookings, South Dakota, and I got to spend a little bit of time, not as much time as I should have or could have, um, engaging with members of that community. And the connector was music. I thought it would be basketball, but basketball was just a precursor to, get a deeper context of what moved that community, and it was music, among other things. So I initially wrote about, as in my master's thesis, the use of jazz and blues in African American and Native American literature. And fast forward, I was still interested and thought that music was the great equalizer. As many people would say that sport is the great equalizer. But for me, I don't know a person who doesn't like some kind of music. So I thought that hip hop would be a very interesting theme to explore. And at the time, people like Mark Anthony Neal, who's down at Duke University, sociologist by trade, but cultural anthropologist by the work that he has done, and some others, Michael Eric Dyson, they were writing about hip hop from this national trope. And so I had needed to go someplace else to do the work because I wanted to write about hip hop. And Poland ended up being the place. So I wrote about Polish hip hop as a form of situated learning and multiliteracies, still keeping the linkage to literacy and reading and writing, specifically English, but contextually trying to understand why in the world would people in a 98% Catholic backed country in terms of their religious beliefs be interested in this urban, gritty um, theme of trying to figure it all out, and didn't really get it until probably 3 months in the Bloco Vista, the block of flats, uh, which is the equivalent to the Polish ghettos, but also in the suburban areas where Puszczykowo and Poznań, where it's really green, Jelena Góra, the Green Mountains, places that I didn't expect hip hop to live, because hip hop for me was contextualized as a very urban, gritty uh, pathway to telling the story. And these folks in Poland looked at it as a way not just to tell the story, but a belief system. So it was pretty cool. I had a great couple years there as well.
And where during this journey did you meet your wife?
I saw my wife out of the window of Dr. John Wheeler's office as I prepared to go to Poland, and she says that I embellished the story, but this is what happened. I looked out the window, and Dr. Wheeler was talking, and I ceased to hear him, and he said something else, and I snapped out of it, and I said, "Who is that?" And he said, "Oh, that's Jamie. She works over in the development office." And I tried to meet Jamie as quickly as I possibly could. So I met her right before I left, and we got married as soon as I got back, pretty much.
Really?
Yes.
So like dated for just a couple months?
No, no, no. So I was in Poland I went over in the summer in '04, then went back again in '05, came back to the U.S. in '06, '05, '06, and she moved to Pennsylvania, where I landed my first full time job in academia, uh, in the academic area, and got married 6 months later in June.
Okay. And so I guess that kind of takes us to almost around the time of the financial downturn.
Right.
But it sounds like you landed before then, uh, at least somewhere where to have some stability. So that was in the Lehigh Valley.
Actually, I started off at Keystone College first, in La Plume, Pennsylvania, just north of Clark Summit, north of Scranton, Pennsylvania. Everyone will notice that if they are interested or know the office, Scranton, PA, Dunder Mifflin Paper Company, that is a real thing, and they used to host Thursday night gatherings at the top of that building. But started there, and was in student affairs first, assistant dean of students, before I transitioned into an assistant professor of early childhood education.
So let's. let's shift the conversation maybe now to education. And I mean, there are so many different directions we could go on this topic, and I'm not quite sure which direction to go. You've now been president of Motlow State for 8 years,
Correct.
and you went through a number of different kind of administrative positions to get there. And I'm assuming now, with that 8 years, you've learned a huge amount about the higher education academic world, the finances behind it, how it works, um, the the progress of early education through secondary, through to higher ed. What have you learned? What's well, what's working and what's not working? I mean, I think we're
Yeah.
we're at a very interesting point in the economy, and where we are in job development. I mean, there's now the cost of college has been harped on quite heavily for a few years now. Uh,
Right.
the focus on uh, more technical colleges, more uh, training for you know quote unquote blue collar jobs, more emphasis on that, and but we are still kind of falling behind at a global level when compared to other countries when it comes
Yeah.
to reading, writing, arithmetic. I mean, it's amazing, that America keeps its lead with the research and the work that comes out of Silicon Valley for the most part. Um, Apart from that, be interesting. Where would we be in the global economy?
Yeah. I mean, I'll start there, Bob, because I think that's a one. It's a we are, as you said, at an inflection point as a country in relation to uh, what does it mean to lead on a global scale. And we do have Silicon Valley. We do have the work that takes place at Arizona State University in terms of delivering education in a flexible, formidable, formidable way. Southern New Hampshire has been a great example of that. So is Western Governors University has been a great example of that. We have the MITs of the world that churn out high level logical reasoning technology as a bent, but it's really mathematically inclined. And that's given us the ability to scale some things. And then I think that in not trying to give it as an answer, but one of the reasons I think that we as a country continue to lead is because of the entrepreneurial spirit of the young folks who are making magic happen with emerging platforms. And they're not always technology. They could be regional or reasonable ways to go about manufacturing and adding the digital bent or the emerging technology slant to some already existing practices from industrial or agrarian backgrounds. Um, this concept of where we will reside, I think Huntsville, Alabama, Nashville, Tennessee, and we don't call it a research triangle in the Southeast like they do in North Carolina with North Carolina State, Chapel Hill, Duke, and Wake Forest being on the outskirts of that. But between Vanderbilt, Middle Tennessee State University, University of Alabama, Huntsville, University of Tennessee Southern, and then bisecting going northeast, we have access to the University of Tennessee Space Center, University of Tennessee Knoxville, and then ultimately community and technical colleges within the Tennessee Board of Regents system. Tennessee Technological University is also included in that triangle. So this idea of replicating and again, this isn't an answer, but it's a perspective. We have an opportunity to create something unique. Stretching all the way to Bristol, where East Tennessee State University is, by creating a triangle that stretches out like that based on the work that's needed in the Appalachia uh, mountains, and supporting the emergent industries that are behind screens and use software, but absolutely need people power and can't just simply rely on, uh, in some instances, the bazooka of AI that people are trying to espouse as this is going to solve everything. It will not solve everything. I don't know that there's one thing that solves everything, but it will be a component, an important component in how we train, develop over the lifespan of people, because I think we're all recognizing now that higher education's responsibility has always been to prepare people to impact their economies post graduation. But now we recognize that jobs are going to expand and swell quickly. What you do when you first get hired, it could change within 180 days, and you're expected to pick up a couple of new skills to keep emerging and growing with the talent pool and the expectations of your duties and responsibilities in organizations. Um,
Well, I'm curious to hear your thoughts about. I mean, we go on an AI for a while. Um, we've been running. I feel like as a society we're running two grand experiments. That the last experiment for the last 10 years has been the impact of social media on a entire generation.
right.
How they think, how they interact, how they socialize, their attention spans. Um, I mean, so many different areas, and we're now kind of starting another huge social experiment with AI. And and as an English teacher, I mean, I don't know, I'm not privy to how AI is being used today, right now, within elementary schools
Right.
uh, or secondary. My own experience, uh, I mean, AI is wonderful for cleaning up your writing, but are we going to lose an entire generation that doesn't know the basics of the English language because AI has been their crutch and has just made it so easy?
Yeah. I'm hoping that those who are in the pre-K uh, to 12, so the primary, middle, and secondary schools, they're going to be folks who still think it's valuable, and it is valuable to be able to parse a sentence on a board. And whether that board's a whiteboard or it's a generated software platform that allows you to parse sentences, being able to just deconstruct the language is just as important as being able to construct the language. You have to know the parts, you have to know the practices, and you have to know the principles of language. Without language, you know, can we do anything? And I know that we can do mathematical equations without language, but still, math is a language, in my opinion. So I can't fathom a learning scape where fundamental practices such as being able to write or type, being able to communicate effectively, and demonstrate through various levels of comprehension um, how something is constructed and deconstructed. So I know that we lean into software, and we will continue to lean into software and algorithms and the like. But the basics, I think, need to continue to have you put your hands on things for all intents and purposes for now, because contextual compliant. And when I say compliant, I'm talking about actually putting your hands on something like the Udera Welty novel Neighbor Rosicky. A farmer doesn't just get a bot to do the farming. The farmer still puts his hands in the dirt, or her hands in the dirt, to see how the soil is, to smell the soil. The same thing can be true of writing. Um, Picking up a pen and a pencil. I know that we've moved away in some states from cursive and things like that, but being able to deconstruct and construct language will continue to always be very, very important. Just because we can talk to Siri, talk to Alexa, or talk to whatever someone may have created and call it by name, doesn't mean that's the only way we ought to be engaging with each other and our electronic platforms.
Do you have any insight into, um, within the Tennessee public school system and K through 12, how they're adapting or thinking about AI within the curriculum?
I do. My wife works in the high school where my son attends, Upperman High School, and the use of AI at this point, because at a state level and at a system level and at a local level, and so the systems being higher education, Department of Ed, uh, and the state obviously being the state of Tennessee, but at the local level, I think that there's still some want to understand the framework around what is good and bad prompting. What are the use cases? It's still so new for most people. It's really new. It's not new for you and I, Bob, but it's so new for most people. Um, they want to make sure that the students are doing the work and prepared to go on to do whatever they're going to do next. So at this point, I have not seen frameworks or policies at a local school level. I'm not saying that they don't exist. I don't know all 95 counties inside and out, but I can say without any reservation that I know that we're working towards that as a state. In December of this year, the Governor Bill Lee has put together a task force that's working on AI policy and scope. We know that 2 years ago, the European Union put something together already, if not a year ago. They put together a policy already. We'll see the semblance of a policy for the state of Tennessee created out of a white paper or research review from a group of intellectuals and business people, et cetera, that will go through our next legislative session in 2026. The Tennessee Board of Regents, we have a generalized AI policy that is informing, as you mentioned, that K through 12. But since we have the middle college where we're seeing 10th, 11th, and 12th grade students taking our courses, it is impacting our kids, and our faculty are learning and choosing uh, how they will use it in the classroom and what the parameters are. I think it's kind of the way that we've had Scantron to electronic tests. For a long time, people, and sometimes some people may still use Scantron, but the testing centers, you choose to use a tool, AI, being the new tool, the nouveau tool, and you have to determine the framework in which that tool is going to be reasonably, responsibly, ethically, morally just for the purposes of teaching and learning. Um, the part about Motlow State as a teaching and learning institution, although we do semblances of research, but we're a teaching and learning institution. So for us, painting that picture with the K through 12 is to make sure that we are reflective in what they're going to do so that we don't prepare those students or expect those students to come into Motlow with an expectation that we're not meeting the mark when they get here. So at this time, we're just in a hurry up and wait mode, but still moving forward.
Have any of the large AI companies come to offer their platform to all the students and faculty? I mean, Anthropic has made a pretty big push, um, and has been deploying Claude Pro uh, to a host of universities, including Champlain, where I teach. And
Mhm.
so I'm curious.
Yeah, well, we haven't heard directly from, or I haven't. Maybe my CIO has heard from our group. I have, as usual, how I like to move around. So I've been engaging with as many people uh, who are part of the larger bodies like OpenAI, Anthropic, Perplexity. Anthropic does Claude and Perplexity and others. But I'm also interested in, I won't call them boutique. I'll just call them specialized, where they can come and actually build out what we need to have in house, so we can make sure that it works for us as an organization based on how we work, and not a universal umbrella to where they can. pieces and widgets together that meet everybody's need. Like I really want it to be customized to the men and women and the students that work at our institution. So that's what we've been exploring, and I'm hopeful that our call this afternoon is going to lead to us being able to pull the trigger and move forward with some opportunities.
Okay. Um, you and I, and originally met through the use of virtual reality and applied VR within for teaching and for nurse training. It's a very strange inflection point as well for the immersive technology industry, whether it's virtual reality or augmented reality, and I think AI has taken a lot of the wind, uh, out of VR, and unfortunately we're losing more options for headset hardware, um, and I'm just from your point of view, where just thinking about the last 18 months, 24 months, where's VR within Motlow today? Is it stable? Is it been is it growing? Has it been highly adopted, or are you starting to kind of taper off from it a little?
Well, we still take an integrated approach to it, and it's embedded into uh, many of our courses. So we're not going to walk away from VR. We see the commonly, if you're in the industry and you're making your bones off of a particular area or particular platforms, you may have seen it as an assault on VR. You know how AI has been proliferated or is proliferating everything. We're seeing it as an opportunity for us to infuse um, it further. And when I say it, I mean AI into VR, MR, XR, AR, because the idea of training pilots, which is an area of emphasis for us, aviation, we're using VR platforms and simulated training spaces to still provide hours, FAA rated hours for those who can't get up in planes but may have some downtime. We're also using VR and injecting AI into it with our vision systems and our robotics and mechatronics and EV labs, where we're training folks to identify and work on problems and solutions for cars, trucks, and technology that could be in the warehouse to a vehicle at the tier one and OEM level. We're also looking at how VR can be leveraged to train folks who are far away in our distilling program, to be able to see it and be in the same space with a rendering of one of the master distillers, potentially, or owner of one of the recognized distilleries within the state of Tennessee, or the Tennessee Guild cohort consortia. So we continue to see that as a viable platform, i.e., VR as a viable platform, not only for instruction, but also for simulated training environments. It is one of the most cost effective and safest spaces to make mistakes, to determine if the math is right, literally, if things will work or if they won't work. So I don't ever see us moving away from it. We just look at AI plus VR plus in the future quantum and or further spatial computing, how that can impact and prepare us as an institution to support the needs of industry and communities that we're serving.
Fantastic. Um, I guess maybe as a way to wrap up, as you're kind of preparing for the next academic year, what are you excited about for the next 12 months?
I'm excited about the. I always get excited about the enrollment push. This next 60 days is always important to all institutions, no matter they're big, little, small, medium sized. Um, I get refreshed on an annual basis, meeting new people, new students, parents, post orientation or prior to their orientation to the institution. So I'm always excited because the most important part of all of this is about people. It's about the student. It's about the trainee. And that's where I start every day. I think that's why I get up still excited about, okay, who do I get to meet today? What do we get to do together today? Programmatically, we are launching our distilling program this fall, with support from the Tennessee Distillers Guild, but principally Uncle Nearest Whiskey and Jack Daniel. And we hope to continue to expand on the spirits industry and maybe move into some other areas as supported and directed by our partners to help continue to build and support an important ecosystem and industry for the state of Tennessee. We're engaging in some nuanced programs that I think are important, but may not be as, I don't know, but I don't want to use the word sexy here because I don't know if people get that, but invigorating. I'm interested in the arts area. We've dug really heavily into the science, technology, engineering, mathematics, and aviation area the first 8 years here. So the next focus areas will be things like gospel choir, trying to build a recording studio, leather making, or working with tools that it's not whittling, but it is tied to craftsmanship. Those are some areas of interest. And Bob, we have a unique service area because we're around so many lakes and airports. So conceptually, having conversations with chambers of commerce, the state of Tennessee, local communities about aerotropolises, where we build appropriately sized cities that infuse economic and community development into rural areas through building around these smaller airports. And then the idea of these lakes as additional spaces to build economic impact for those who formerly farmed or logged, et cetera, in some capacity, to be able to create livable wages so folks don't feel that they need to leave for cities. And the last part is probably, how do we take the emerging technology platforms such as VR, such as AI, such as the various forms of compute, and make sure that rural kids are prepared for global jobs. And I hope that I'm saying that right and it resonates not only with you and I, but with the listeners. The concept of making sure that no matter where a person is from or resides or chooses to reside, that there is a way for them to successfully sustain themselves and live the kinds of lives that they would like to live. So that, I guess that's another why or purpose for me over the next several years. Like, how do we make sure that we can frame that and that it remains viable beyond the life cycle of being at an institution or retiring, that this is something that becomes part and parcel of our mission.
Well, Michael, it's been a pleasure. I really appreciate you taking time out of your busy day, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the summer. And hopefully, it doesn't get too hot for all of us. It's been brutal so far
Yeah.
this month.
Yeah. Well, Bob, I want to thank you for giving me an opportunity to chat with you. It's always a pleasure. And it's been far too long since we've laid eyes on each other. So when I'm up in DC this next little bit, I'll hopefully you'll be around and have time, and we can connect and break bread and see each other in reality, not just virtually.
Well, you come join us in Iceland in November for our seventh European conference.
Wow. Please send me the dates.
Take care.
All right. Take care. Thank you so much.